Every October since 2011, Retro Movie Geek has brought you the spooky side of retro movies. And this year is no different. So, a haunting we will go, as we dig up classic tales of ghosts and hauntings that are 20 years old or older. But remember, we spoil the hell out of every movie we cover. So consider yourself forewarned. Spooky Flix Fest starts now.
Welcome to Spooky Flix Fest, damn it. This is Spooky Flix Fest 2023, and we are Horror Movie Weekly, the midnight bowling of horror podcasts. And I am the ineffectual captain of this ship, Jay of the Dead, podcasting from Pleasant Grove, Utah, and my esteemed co-hosts who are joining me, as always, faithful and vigorous. The host of the Watsy Party Horror Show in Washington State, Mr. Watson. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Captain Jay. Hey, you don't happen to have that captain's coat, do you?
No, but...
Nice outfit. Styling.
I know. I love one of those things. Or one of them Captain Crunch hats.
No, I meant the one he's wearing on the death ship.
Right. No, I know.
I don't think you want one of those.
I know. You're trying.
You lived in Germany circa 1940 something.
You're trying to bait me, which is not good because I recently was trying to say on a different podcast, I was trying to say I'm a stickler for being critical of contrivance. And I couldn't think of the word stickler, so I started by saying I'm a Nazi, which I am not a Nazi. Okay, damn it. So anyway.
Is Piles where's that come from?
It's English. It's English.
Well, not quite. They were actually pretty anti-Nazi. So okay, you're. But do you wear Hugo Boss?
No. I don't even do that.
Drive a Volkswagen?
No, I don't.
Oh, well, dang it. Okay, I guess you're not a Nazi then. All right, move on.
No, okay. Well, and then also we have here our other beloved co-hostess, the co-hostess with the mostest. She's the host of the No Bodies Horror Podcast in Connecticut. We welcome Projectile Varmint, a.k.a. Susie.
Yeah, if you're the captain, can I please be the first one thrown over the ship?
Yes.
I gotta go.
Yes. No, understandable. No, because here's the thing. Horror Movie Weekly, just in case the listeners out there misunderstand, we are grateful to be invited back for another year on Spooky Flix Fest. Because last year, we did think that we had it bad back when we had to review Wacko from 1982, but we had no idea how good we had it back then. That was the good old days. Now, before we reveal the official title of tonight's movie selection, here are some alternative titles that didn't make the cut. Snooze Cruise, a ghost ship tale. The Lethargic Liner, a slow-motion specter. The Haunted Hammock on the High Seas. Nautical Nap Time.
I like that one.
When Susie... So this evening, apparently, Mr. Watson did his homework last night, but Susie and I watched it this evening right before we recorded, and when she started texting that this movie even put her dogs to sleep, I thought it was hyperbole. But no, it wasn't. So we're reviewing Death Ship from 1980, not to be confused with the far superior Ghost Ship from 2002. We can come back to that in a minute, but here are the main details for this film. Death Ship was released in March of 1980. It was directed by Alvin Rakoff. That would have been a hard last name to have. And it stars George Kennedy and Richard Crenna. And here's the premise. When a mysterious ghost ship rams into a party cruise liner, a handful of key survivors find themselves alive on a raft. When the ghost ship looms near them in the water, they climb aboard a haunted Nazi torture ship. Will they succumb first to the ship's inane insanity or its morose mundanity?
Death ship. It came out of the night. Searching.
Signal him to all the course. We have, sir. Well, signal him again, damn it.
Striking. Bringing terror in its wake.
This should have been called Mundane Ship. Mr. Watson, what did you think of this movie?
Well, this was a first-time watch for me, although I've heard about Death Ship here and there over the years. Anytime there was a discussion about seafaring horror, this title would pop up. It's definitely its own horror subgenre, horror on a boat, but due to how difficult and costly it must be to produce movies like this, you don't get a whole lot of them. And that's a shame because I find that I often enjoy maritime horror. I've gone deep sea fishing a number of times, even in one particular instance that was a lot more dangerous, I guess, than I was led to believe until we got back to shore. I find it very exhilarating, although I hate getting wet. I do not like swimming, but I like kayaking and I like me a good boat, oddly enough. But so speaking of that, I found Death Ship's setting to be compelling at first, anyway. This old rundown ship is definitely creepy, and I think with a strong script, it could have been fully utilized. And sadly, that's not what we got here. Reportedly, I guess this actual ship that they were using broke down within an hour of use. So the filmmakers didn't get very many shots of the ship in action. These all had to be faked, which is, kind of a bummer. But yeah, with the exception of the aesthetic of the Death Ship itself, there's just not a lot to this movie. By the time our characters find themselves more or less safely aboard the Death Ship, there's a lot of meandering about and more than a fair share of lather, rinse, repeat moments. And by that, I mean to say that you'll see things move on their own a lot, followed by someone dying. And then everyone's just kind of not reacting a whole lot to what just happened. And then that loop starts over again, and that right there made me laugh a few times. We were joking about it earlier, the way the characters just move on from what they just saw. For instance, Captain Ashland suddenly shows up, like I said, looking all styling in that Hugo Boss Nazi outfit. And he's talking to the first mate, and I almost want to elbow the first mate, like, you should say something. You should look at that hat he's wearing. You see that symbol on there? You see this? Where did he get that? And don't you want to know why he's wearing it? They just kind of talk, and it's like, oh, so we're just not, okay, I guess we'll just be silent about it. The hot chick of the movie takes a blood shower, and then there's no blood anymore, and then she just sort of gets thrown overboard like Susie a couple minutes later, and you're like, wait, but why? How come that? Oh, okay, I guess we're moving on from that. It's just kind of what this movie is. It felt like a lot of moments like that. And I wouldn't say I hated this movie or anything. I'm not feeling particularly upset about it or anything like that. But I don't know. We're just not dealing with a very thoughtful or careful script here. And I think the ship itself deserved that. And so, things just happen for reasons that amount to the boat is just haunted by Nazis. All right. So get off my back about it. So it's just like, okay, sure. I guess I'll never be watching this movie again. But yeah, we definitely had it better in the days of Wacko. I'll say that.
Yes. Well said, sir. One thing I always admire about you, Watson, is how you approach this job that we don't get paid,
Susie
paid
said
for.
Susie said that about one of the movies she didn't think I'd like. She's like, Watson will probably find something positive about it, but he won't like it. And I liked it more than she thought, whichever movie it was we were talking about. But yeah, I try to do that. I don't know. Maybe.
You're earnest and you're fair-minded, and I respect it. So good job. Now we'll go to the dismissive one. Susie, what did you think of this?
Well, I actually thought there was a lot of symbolism in this movie. No, nothing.
Wait.
I have a fish tank next to my TV with some super boring goldfish in it, and the action in the goldfish tank was 10 times better than what was on screen. When you were saying they kept the ship broke down and they didn't have much to work with there, that's why they showed us the engine scene probably over 23 times. So take a shot every time they show an engine whirring and you will be dead 10 minutes into this movie of alcohol poisoning.
Those pistons going up and down.
Just up and down and over and over. And every single shot they have in this movie, you see it from 6 different angles. And it's no more interesting than the first angle, which was not interesting. My 3 major gripes with this movie are it was boring with a pointless plot. It had terrible cinematography and poor character development. Yeah, I don't even know how I'm going to say much more, but.
So regarding the symbolism, you didn't read any sort of a metaphor into the blood shower, such as some kind of menstruation. No. I mean, what is that though? What was the blood? Why was she screaming? There's a scene where she's in the shower and
They had that scene so that she could just like show her boobs and maybe a little bush.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And, how can we make her turn around a bunch of times? Oh, she's going to be hysterical.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not even like the shower was filling up with the blood and she couldn't get out. And then when he's trying to break open this, flimsy looking, fiberglass door, with a little window there, it's like he's kind of hitting all flat ended with this board. It's like, no, just here, turn it around, ram it straight through. Sure, the supernatural forces or whatever. But then next time we see her, the captain's got her and throws her over the edge. And then we're like, so we're moving on from that. That's not a thing anymore.
She needed to use some physics. If she had just sat down and pushed her legs out, the force would have pushed open that door.
Yeah,
right.
I'm with you.
I mean, and with that scene, one more thing about it is that it's weird to me that she was screaming as if she was in agony. And there are a couple other scenes where things are happening to the characters and they're screaming like it's super awful. And it's like, hey, you're okay. There's actually nothing. You're not even in pain.
Just turn the shower head away. Just turn it to the side.
It's weird.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you when I knew that this film, because honestly, I've had a heck of a day and work, sucked today. And I couldn't wait to get to like, hey, it's time to chill and watch a movie. And even though Susie was dissing this movie, I'm like, that's all right. It's fine. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. So I sit down, I'm all comfy and everything, just excited. Perfect attitude to watch a movie. And I knew that we were in trouble when the little black and white film that they show, the film within a film, they see a projector and it shows this film. It was like a film from like 1936. It was this musical, Everything is Rhythm. I looked that up in the trivia. That film was so much more, this black and white musical was so much more compelling than what was going on within the world of the film itself. And I'm like, wow, this is bad. Like when it's something like that you can compare and draw a contrast. And I mean, that really spoke to me.
You know what spoke to me?
What?
The shtick with the little boy who always had to pee. I was like, this is going to mean something later on in the movie. He always had to go to the bathroom. Yeah. But it never led to anything. I was waiting for the peeing boy to be a symbol for something.
Right. Well, we got the setup and the payoff of the women and men.
Yeah. Men. Yeah. The brother and sister. It's like, wow, we're doing this, huh?
Yeah.
I'll tell you something that kind of floored me a little. I mean, as much as you can be floored by a movie this inconsequential. But there's a scene in the third act where we get, we'll call it, I'll borrow Dr. Bishop's terminology here. We get a tour of the dead, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty gnarly, in more ways than one. Yeah, the special effects, it was like, okay, that's pretty gross. But, it hit me, and I'm sure it hit you all as well. Like, okay, we're seeing the remains of these victims that the Nazis had tortured and killed. We're hearing their screams. And the deal here is that this movie it isn't campy enough for these scenes to be like funny or entertaining or even frightening. And it's not a cultured or refined enough movie to give these scenes the weightiness or the heaviness that the historical context might require.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't use the word offensive, but these scenes are like a little uncomfortable. Like when someone, like your grandmother says a slur that she doesn't know is a slur, and you're just like, Grandma, we don't say that word anymore.
Right.
Like what is going on here?
Right. Right.
Like,
so
just a little, yeah.
So it was almost, you're saying it was almost like exploitative to use something of that nature in a film like this.
Yeah, it didn't feel, like I said, okay, there's a way, if you want, you could joke around about it, good luck with that one, or a way to make it scary and or to feel the, the impact of, wow, what the tragedy here. But you don't feel any of that. It's just kind of like, okay, this is what we're doing. I mean, it really is the equivalent of going, Grandma, just shh, no. It's okay. It's okay. Just don't say that. No, I'll explain it later. Okay, we're at the restaurant.
Right.
It's almost like an afterthought.
Yeah,
That whole part was added in because they're like, oh, we need something. We need to elevate this some way. And they're like, oh, let's make this about the Nazis.
Yeah.
And that was like 3/4 of the way into the film.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought early on maybe the ship was targeting maybe some of the Jewish members of the survivors, because the first guy that gets killed is a Jewish actor who's like done a ton of stuff and even like a documentary or something about, the Holocaust or something like that. And I was thinking, okay, is this what we're going to be getting here? Is this ship going to be picking them off and maybe it'll spare others being like, hey, you're cool. But it wasn't even going that way at all. Like that would have actually had to force the film to maybe be better or have a more
You're giving
careful
it too
script.
much credit.
Oh, yeah. Well, it turned out none of that was happening.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this movie's just kind of doing whatever. They had the boat. They had the people there. Like, hurry up and we got to film our scene.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But film them with no emotion whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, just to talk a little bit about a screenwriting thing in this. This is kind of nerdy, but hilarious to me. So the stars are George Kennedy and Richard Crenna. Those are pretty famous 70s actors, especially. And like George Kennedy was in the airplane movies. So it's definitely disaster movie era. And as this film opens with the ships colliding, it feels like a disaster movie. So in the screenwriting terms, I don't know if this is boring to people, but if anyone's ever worked on a screenwriting script, there's something that you do in movies where it's a cut to instruction. It's just cut to, and it's kind of an abrupt change in scenery, and it happens really fast. So we have this ship collision in the beginning, right? And it's kind of this disaster imagery, which, by the way, some of it was borrowed and inserted from a 1960 film. But anyway, which is super funny. But like the piano falling and stuff was from that 1960 film. But anyways, then all of a sudden there's an abrupt, very fast cut to scene. And it's like the next day, and then you just have a handful of survivors on this little raft. And it is hilarious. I laughed out loud. There was no sort of survivor struggle or anything. It's just the little ensemble of characters that they got us familiar with happened to end up in this raft. And it's like, we're not going to show you how this happened or how the ship sank or anything. It's just like, okay, the characters we were showing you, here they are. They're on a raft now. Let's go from here. And that was just so hilarious to me.
We had one scene where we saw a little bit of water coming in too.
Yes.
I've written here, I was like, ship sinks, people on raft.
Yep. That's it.
That's it.
It was like,
And they weren't even wet. They weren't even wet. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
I'll tell you something I did notice in that scene where we first encounter the raft. The captain is in that raft before they bring him in. I noticed that. I'm just like, wait, okay. And then when that hand reaches out of the water and then, they pull the captain, I'm like, wait, he was already there. I rewound it like 3 times. Like, no, there he is. Little continuity issue there.
Oh man, that's funny. I'm
the worst at that. I never notice that stuff. It's usually like other people will tell me, hey, that thing was on the left and now it's on the right. I never notice that stuff. That's not usually, it's definitely not a strength of mine. But yeah, if I can notice it, you done messed up.
Right. Well, another thing I thought of, and again, I don't think that this might be giving the film too much credit, but at some point, they emphasize a lot that the ship needs blood. Like it must have blood. And at one point they even say it must have blood to survive. So it's almost like a vampiric ghost Nazi ship, which is like, I don't think I've ever seen a vampiric type of ship in a film.
Well, there was Blood Vessel from a couple years ago that is a really cool vampire beastly freak on a ship.
Nice.
That movie is neat.
Good way. Good. Yeah. Good reference. Excellent. Blood Vessel. Yeah. Which is a brilliant title, by the way. Let's talk about that too. I wanted to return to that real quick. I have this weird compulsion in my life to try to sort out things that are confusing when you have two things that are similar. And I can't think of a great example right now except for this one, and it is Death Ship and Ghost Ship. And for years, I would mix that up and get it confused, especially since if you look at the cover art, it seems like Ghost Ship, which is from 2002, and I won't talk much about this because I believe that someone else was lucky enough to cover Ghost Ship on this, but I believe Ghost Ship must have drawn its cover art, maybe at least some inspiration perhaps from this. And by the way, I know they'll cover that too. One of the greatest horror openings in cinema history. But just wanted to clarify, this is Death Ship 1980. And if you did want to watch this, like if you were having trouble getting to sleep or something, if you have Amazon Prime, it is streaming on there. So anyways, any other thoughts before we move into our final thoughts and ratings? Anything else you want to talk about, guys?
My favorite line in this movie was during the blood shower when the guy says, "Lori, don't give up," and then runs out the room. Like, okay, Lori, don't give up.
That was hilarious.
Yeah,
The whole
just
movie.
hang in there, pal.
Yeah. The whole movie to me seemed like a bad haunted house.
Yeah.
Like when you go to a haunted house, but it's like not a good one.
True.
That was Ghost Ship. No, not Ghost Ship. I wanted to watch Ghost Ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Death Ship. Yes. Another interesting line in this, and I think I wrote it down pretty close, if not exact, but like this is a line, honestly, that I think most horror movies, if they actually adopted this mantra, that they might actually survive. It is, nothing can happen as long as we're all together. And it's like, did you actually say that in a horror movie? That's like, horror characters don't know that. But then what do? They get separated and start dying anyway. But anyways.
Can either of you explain the candy scene?
The candy was poisonous and gave her boils.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I guess that's it. Here's how much I was reaching for this movie to be good. I was like, oh, is this like when, she starts going to the boils, and I was thinking, okay, is there something about, the rumors that old Adolf and Ava were down in the bunker and there was some poison happening? And I was like, yeah, I'm reaching, man. I'm reaching. This movie's not up to the task of doing anything. It's just supernatural candy. Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever
It
is
looked very
right.
fresh.
It did look
didn't have
fresh,
any
yeah.
signs of aging or humidity touching it.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yes, absolutely. So I was trying to think of something horrorific for the audience, for the listeners of Spooky Flix Fest and Retro Movie Geek. And since at the beginning Watson mentioned deep sea fishing, I will share, since there was nothing horrifying about this movie, one time on Netflix, I did see something truly terrifying regarding deep sea fishing. I don't know if you guys saw this one, but what's the fish called? Is it a marlin or a sawfish where its nose is very pointy and sharp and it's kind of serrated? It's long, like a swordfish or a... Am I thinking of the right fish, Watson? Come on, help me out with this.
I thought of swordfish immediately. I'm not picturing any other pointy nosed fish.
Yeah, I think it is a swordfish, and I think if you look up close to a swordfish's, that pointy nose thing on the edges of it, you wouldn't think this, but it's like serrated looking. Okay, so anyway, somebody on this Netflix show, and I forget the show, forgive me, but he was fishing, deep sea fishing for swordfish. Wait a second, are they the ones that have the big sail on the back? That might be a marlin. I'm so sorry. I'm driving everyone nuts. It's like a sail for their dorsal fin. Susie, you have a fish tank. Why can't you answer this?
She's like, I'm fresh out of those ones.
Sailfish. But yeah, so maybe it's a sailfish. It looks the same, except it has that giant. Okay, so it's a sailfish. I was pretty close. Anyways, so he's reeling in this freaking sailfish, and it's taking forever, and they fight like crazy. Anyway, this thing jumped out of the water, as they do, but it came toward the boat, toward the fisherman. And when it was coming at him, this happened very quickly, of course. Apparently, his mouth was agape. His mouth was open. And that freaking sailfish's pointy, serrated nose thing stabbed through the back of his throat with his mouth open and came out the back of his neck and hit him like that. And of course,
Did he die?
He nearly died, and I'm sure he wished he was dead. It took him months and months and months to recover. And would you believe that miraculously he survived this? And after he finally recovered well enough, he went back out and fished again.
My man.
And caught one of those things. So, yeah, it's kind of inspiring to me in some ways, but in other ways, it's like, dude, come on. Let's not look a gift fish in the mouth or look you in the mouth. Anyways, that's enough of that story. Final thoughts and ratings on Death Ship. Susie, what do you think about this thing?
I don't know what Gilman Joel has against me or us, but after watching this movie, I contemplated quitting podcasting to save my eyes from watching anything like this ever again.
Ooh.
I'm calling in sick to the next Spooky Flix invite. If this is going to be a yearly thing where we have to watch a super bad movie and then try to find something about it to talk about and not bore everybody to sleep. But I think we did a good job reviewing it.
Yeah. Of course, we're Horror Movie Weekly.
Maybe not for long if this is what we're getting.
Okay. So what do you rate this puppy?
2 out of 10.
Okay. And that's an
That's
avoid.
generous.
You can't see any circumstances under which one should watch this.
No, not one.
Okay.
Watch my fish tank instead.
Okay. Nice. 2 and avoid. Okay. Mr. Watson, what do you say?
You know, I've heard people say that there's a charm to Death Ship. I don't see it, but if that charm does exist, there's not enough of that charm here to cause one to overlook its sins. The lack of character development, the need for a more fleshed out antagonist and what that force is and does. There's a lot here that could have made this a more interesting and actually a scary movie. You know, it's funny. Long ago, I remember hearing a podcast, something I heard a handful of years ago, say that Death Ship was The Shining on a ship. No joke. They said that. Rated it pretty highly. My friends, it is not that. That is not what we're dealing with here whatsoever.
The Shining on a ship.
I swear to God. Yeah.
And that was the podcast on crack.
Oh yeah. It's not even a show anymore. I don't know who these people were. This was back in the days when I was just kind of aimlessly downloading random horror podcasts and didn't have the click. I wasn't even podcasting yet. Had no click yet.
It was probably Horror
that
Metropolis.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Those bastards. Yeah, man. I was thinking to myself, like, okay, going into this, like, so, I could see where it might be going for that, but this was actually released a few months before The Shining, so I don't know. It's not even a failed experiment. I don't know. In any case, I would love to see The Shining play out on the high seas, but there's a level of sophistication required to make that happen, and Death Ship that's not what this is, my friends. I'm coming in with a 3 out of 10, low priority viewing. I think it just if you are on a kick where you're like, hey, I gotta see horror on the ocean. I gotta see some boats and I gotta see some horrors, boats and horrors. Wow, that really just came organic. I swear to God, I didn't have that one. The old boats and hoes song from which movie is that? Step Brothers. But
nice.
Yeah, 3 out of 10. It's just I don't know. If you only get to this if you're like, all right, I'm gonna be watching it for Spooky Flix Fest. Love you, Joel.
Shame on you, Jay, for thinking that was funny.
Love you, Joel.
Over there.
It was so funny because when he first said horrors, I just loved it. Because some people do say horror when they say horror, and just the dad joker in me, man. Anytime I hear something like that, I love it.
Well, you've seen Step Brothers, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, totally. So okay, I will. Before I give my rating, I'll give my confession right here. I gotta stand up for Gilman Joel, as much as it pains me.
I love. Yeah.
Believe it or not, Susie, it's my fault that we end up getting these movies, because what happens is I am like a kid at Christmas when it comes to Spooky Flix Fest. This is my favorite Halloween tradition, to be honest. It really is. And as soon as Joel sends out the email about the list of movies that can be reviewed,
you say I'll take the worst one?
No, that's not even what happens. I jump on that sucker like first, and like this year I was first. Like the second I saw it hit my inbox, bam, I was in there, and we had like, you'll be so sad to hear some of the incredible options. But I'm like, I've never seen Death Ship. I chose this. And what's worse is it was like the first choice. It was wide open, and I chose this. So I'm very sorry, and I will do better next time.
Jay, Susie's going to be quitting Horror Movie Weekly. There's going to be this episode of the Nobodies podcast where she's talking about how this was how she knew she was finished with us.
I know.
Like, yeah, she'll tell us, oh, no, I love you guys. I just don't have the time. And then, cranks out the Nobodies podcast.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, that's right. But
it's not you, it's Death Ship.
but I will say the Retro Movie Geek folks here, they did have Death Ship on the list as an option. So it's kind of like, if you leave stuff on your stairwell that people can trip over, that's what they did to us. And so we fell down the stairs. And I do really feel like...
No, you fell down the stairs and grabbed me and Watson to help you break the fall.
Well, and I do feel like, I gotta admit, this reminds me a lot of an MST3K kind of situation here. Like, because I felt like, even though Joel didn't force us to do this, it was kind of like somebody sent us a movie that we have to sit in the theater and endure and comment about. And that's kind of how I felt about this movie. I really strongly disliked this. For me, 3 out of 10, and I call Death Ship an avoid. So there you have it. That is our horror movie weekly review of Death Ship for Spooky Flix Fest. We want to thank Yo Man Joel and the Retro Movie Geek cast of characters and crew for inviting us. It was a true honor, and we hope that if you all aren't busy, you'll check us out over at horrormovieweekly.com. So, Mr. Watson and Projectile Varmint, thank you for joining me this year for Spooky Flix Fest.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Get all the spookiness you can handle this October by subscribing to Mom and Pop Video Shop on YouTube. You can also find Retro Movie Geek on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you dig up your podcasts. The spooktastic music you heard at the beginning and end of this episode was provided courtesy of Ed and Gavin and their band, Midnight Syndicate. We want to thank them for the use of music from their albums Gates of Delirium and The 13th Hour. Want to sink your ghostly claws into this and all Midnight Syndicate's beautifully macabre music? Then go to midnightsyndicate.com. And remember, spooky is as spooky does.